Hello there everyone, welcome to a Gran Turismo 7 opinion piece where I'm going to give you my opinion as to why I think this week's Daily Race C Group 3 cars at Spa-Francorchamps is the best daily race that Polyphony Digital have ever put together. Now I know it's not been for everyone and I love to hear different opinions about these things. I know some people will think this race is way too long. I know some people don't like the wet weather, so I'm always interested to hear in what your opinion is in the comments, but for me this is probably the best Daily Race C ever. And I guess it's more aimed at maybe the more hardcore audience, the more people more into sort of GTWS, kind of looking for sort of a more sim element to the game. But yeah, we're going to discuss what's the ingredients, why did this race work so well, why has it been so compelling, and why has it been so busy all week. And let's start at the very beginning. Car and track combination. I've always said that settings are more important than car track combination. You can take a bad car track combination, give it good settings and make a good race, but you can take a really good car track combination, give it bad settings and make it really boring. But at the end of the day, Spa and Group 3 or GT3 is an ever popular combination. It's a legendary circuit, it's a very popular car selection. It's an overused selection, not just in Gran Turismo 7 but in sim racing in general, but it makes people come back. People like this combination. Starting from the very beginning, this was a good start for this week's Daily Race C. The next thing we'll take a look at is the weather. One thing that's going to make people keep coming back to a race is a little bit of unpredictability. Now I think one thing we can all agree on is that not just in Gran Turismo 7 again, it'll be the same with LFM, with ACC, iRacing. By the time you get to the end of the week, you've been doing the same race in the same cars, on the same track, with the same weather, with the same strategy. By the end of the week, even before the end of the week, it's probably getting a little bit boring. Certain for me, you know, and I still will do some daily race C's even when the kind of everything's all very predictable. But the very fact you go into this race and you don't know whether it's going to be a dry race, whether it's going to be a wet race, exactly what the weather's going to do. Now the weather has a dynamic element to it, but there's also a little bit of a scripted kind of pattern in there as well. It's not fully unpredictable or fully random, but it's unpredictable and random and dynamic enough to make this very compelling to come back in. And as I said, you don't know if you get a dry race, you don't know if you get a wet race. Unpredictability, variability is always a very good thing for a race in terms of making people come back and keep people interested for the duration of the week. On top of that, PD also seemed to have fixed one of the inherent problems of the wet weather in the game, as in the weather would just move far too quickly. This could lead to the track conditions changing rapidly from corner to corner. It could create a weird catch-up boost as the track started to dry, but with the weather being slowed down so much for this race, those problems have largely been mitigated. So not only is it a kind of very rare use of the dynamic weather in the game, it's also the very best use of the dynamic weather in the game so far. So yeah, the weather has been a hit, even more than usual, because it feels really quite realistic the way it comes in, makes the track wet and then dries up very slowly and sort of eliminates that kind of catch-up boost, which could be a little bit gimmicky and in a lot of ways actually ruin wet races of the past. Next up, let's talk about strategy, because when it didn't rain, and it did rain quite a lot to be fair, but when it didn't rain, this race actually had a very nice element of strategy. Now, we are going to pit at the end of this lap here on the footage that you're looking at, because I never really saved any dry races, but if the rain wasn't to come, which you could tell from looking at the radar before the race started, there was actually some nice elements of strategy in this one, in both the tyre wear and an inclusion of fuel. But fuel is actually not something that PD make kind of an element very often in a race, but in this one it actually played quite a big part, because the refueling rate was actually set down at 7 litres per second. Now, usually for a Group 3 race, it would be set at 10 litres per second, which would mean that you would refuel a lot quicker. And so this was obviously deliberately set because in a fully dry race, you probably ended up about 4 or 5 laps short on the fuel. So if you did a little bit of fuel saving during the race, you could minimise how long you spent in the pits. And we kind of learnt as the week went on, in a wet race, used obviously a lot less fuel in the rain, so you could then kind of try and take on less fuel at your pit stop and trying to work out that. So it was a nice element to the race that we don't very often get in the Daily Race C. Now obviously it's a longer race, and we'll talk about that in due course. But yeah, the fact to set the fuel at 7 litres per second was a nice little touch that not too many people have mentioned in order to increase the strategy. In fact, I've seen some people over the course of the week basically fuel save the entire race, save themselves about 5 or 6 seconds in the pit stop, and get the jump on a lot of cars. Obviously, you've got to do some fuel saving during that. It was going to slow you down, so it was just an extra element to the strategy. In regards to the tyres, again, there was options there on the tyres as well. For example, in a fully dry race, if you happen to feel that you were just a faster car at the back, you could pit as early as lap 4. In the strategy guide in the Genesis, we pitted on lap 4, skipped about 7 cars. Now, we had to kind of give up a couple of positions towards the end because our tyres were pretty worn, but we had a net gain over the course of the race. Now, traditional strategy, most people were just pitting it at lap 10 in a dry race, or lap 9, maybe lap 11. But there was some nice strategy options here, despite, and you knew I was going to come to this at some point, despite the tyre wear model, the longer races here, and the fact that the tyre wear kind of got to that sort of over 50% worn on a stint, just meant there was a little bit of a tyre element to the race as well. But certainly nothing that extreme that it disadvantaged like pad players or people who were particularly bad on the tyre wear too much. But overall, there certainly was some strategic options in this one, both in the tyre wear and on the fuel, which is all you can really ask for, and was very nice to have indeed. And we touched on it earlier on, but another fact that just made this race one of the best races, or best daily races of all time, is of course the length of it. Now, some people probably will see this as a negative, but this race is 20 laps long, and Spa-Francorchamps is certainly not a short circuit. In a Group 3 car in the dry, you're looking at, let's just say 2 minutes 20 per lap. So even in a fully dry race, you're looking at about 45 minutes worth of racing. If the rain came down really heavy and really quite early and stayed heavy to the end, I think I've seen some races run on as long as about 55, 56 minutes. So it's a fair old slog to sort of sit down and commit yourself to 45 to 55 minutes worth of racing. But for me, and I've always said that, longer races are where my enjoyment comes in a lot more. A 20-minute race is fine, but yeah, I do love a race that's a little bit longer, but it becomes about consistency, it becomes about strategy a little bit, it becomes about perseverance, and if your race happens to kind of go a little bit wrong on the first lap, then you've got plenty of time to recover, which is, so for me, this is just a great race length. Now, that's not to say it's not a slog, and certainly after 3 of them in a stream, which all of them were wet, and all of the races went on well over 50 minutes, yeah, it was definitely a draining experience, but just much more enjoyable, in my personal opinion, than a 5-lap race and even a 20-minute race. But yeah, definitely not for everyone, these longer races, and we'll discuss maybe what PD should kind of be doing with these longer races going forward. But yeah, overall, I think that's pretty much all the ingredients that were needed to just make this race almost, not quite perfect. Perfect is a very strong word, but definitely, in my opinion, I think in a lot of other people's opinions, the best daily race seat of all time. And let's be honest, there's nothing particularly fancy with what PD have done in this race. They're just simply using the potential of the game more to its fullest than they ever have done in the past. So yeah, give us that kind of nice car and track combination that's going to certainly get people coming to the races straight away. It's a good length of race, maybe a little bit long overall, to be perfectly honest with you. Around about 40 minutes might well have been a little bit better, but yeah, it just gives you a chance to recover from a bad start, be more consistent. There's more elements than just being ubered quick that comes into the race. You've got that unpredictable element to it with the weather. Again, it's not perfect, it could be more fully random just to give the race a real unpredictable element to it, but you don't know if you're going to have a wet race or a dry race at the start and just how wet the track is going to get until you're in the lobby. And then you've got the strategic element to it. If it does happen to be a dry race, you can kind of work a strategy with the tyres. The fuel became ever more important as the week went on, as people learned that you didn't have to refuel as much in the wet, and just how much time you could actually save by doing the fuel saving. So yeah, that was pretty much it. It's just four or five ingredients there just to make a really good daily race C. But let's be honest, this really should just be a daily race D. I think for a lot of people, myself definitely, I do kind of miss a 20-minute daily race C. So for me, really, a race like this, I would like to have it as a daily race, but a daily race D that maybe runs every 2 to 3 hours maybe runs on alternative days or something, I don't know. But I must say, as much as I've enjoyed this race, I do think it's the best daily race C of all time. I have kind of missed a traditional 20-minute race as well. You know, just jumping into a race every half an hour is a very nice feeling. But yeah, this, you know, I want this in the game as well. We always want more, don't we? And I think, you know, we've been crying out for a long time. Just give us a daily race D, polyphony digital, longer, in-session qualifying. Give us all the variables like you have for this, and they just run it. You know, come up with a kind of pattern, a schedule for when that race runs that you can try and best cater to suit everybody. I would even, to be honest with you, region unlock it so that you've got players from all over the world driving in the same race. We do it, and we all set up alternative accounts. You know, the internet is good enough to support it globally in most places around the world now. But yeah, that's my opinion on this week's Daily Race C. I think it's an absolute cracker. Unfortunately, I couldn't drive it quite as much as I wanted because my back has been very sore. I certainly couldn't stream it as much as I wanted to, but yeah, I do apologise for that. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, folks. Always interested to hear your opinions, and I know this race is not for everyone. I've heard some very good reasons as to why it's not for everyone, but yeah, let me know what you think in the comments of what I had to say about this race, and I'd love to hear what you've got to say about this race as well. Thanks for watching, folks. Catch you on the next one. Goodbye now.